Okay, I will continue.
Yeah. So welcome, Sarah.
Hello.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing this and coming on.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, I'm really kind of excited to see where this conversation goes.
Hmm.
We don't really know each other other than
Not
being like in
really.
the same
Yeah,
circle, like I've known of you for years, but
exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
Like very, very brief passings.
Yeah, and just for people listening, we're part of the similar Gestalt community.
Hmm.
And were you trained by Steve and Eva? Or
Yes.
okay, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So we have the same therapy trainers, which like
Yeah.
for some people wouldn't mean much, but for other people it's like
It's like
really
family.
yeah, yeah. Like we have the same like ancestors or whatever.
Exactly. It means something for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially with Steve and Eva.
Oh yeah. Like
Yeah.
I know. I don't know like who I would be as a therapist without them.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really good way of putting it.
Yeah. So usually just take a moment of silence and it can be short or long and just to settle and kind of open and check in with where we're both at and to give other people a time to settle. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah. So could you kind of give us a bit of a background on what drew you to be a clinician and kind of your journey kind of coming to where you are today? I don't know how long you've been doing it for, but it seems like a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. Let's see here. I graduated from grad school in 2013. So,
Is
yeah,
that
some
after internship and everything? Like you're
after
done?
internship. But then there was the whole postdoc thing. And so I don't think I got licensed for a couple years, but
Yeah. But
yeah, I've
you've
been
been,
licensed for over 5 years now and started in private practice right out of grad school. So,
yeah. What called you to be a clinician?
um, I think I was born with that curiosity and whatever it was that made me really curious about relationships and people.
Hmm.
I had some close people in my life who had, mental health struggles, pretty significant ones. Um, I also, when I was young, was really curious about like why people hurt each other and was really interested in forensic psychology for a while.
Like more on the sort of
Like
violence
crime, yeah,
spectrum. Yeah.
yeah, murder, and eventually realized that like I would never hack it in that field. Like I'm way too sensitive, and those mirror neurons fire very strong in me. So I eventually departed from that, but
Was that
uh,
were you thinking about that as like a career track?
when I started college, I there was an internship with the FBI that I had my eye on.
Wow,
Um,
you were gonna be like Clarice or I
that
forget.
was the idea, but like I think I also realized at some point that job kind of doesn't exist.
Oh yeah,
Like,
that's a novel job.
yeah, like maybe a couple of people have that job, but um, yeah, it the interest in psychology was like always there. I think I had my first psych class in high school, and dreams have always been really like consciousness has always been really
Hmm.
interesting to me.
And when do you think when for yourself did you start to explore consciousness kind of in your own way? And I know that's
Hmm.
a broad question, like
Yeah.
wherever that goes for you, you know.
Yeah. It probably started with learning about lucid dreaming,
Oh, okay.
which I was really interested for a time and still am, but it's hard. It takes a lot of dedication.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I had a phase, and then now
mhm.
sometimes when I'm lucid now, I'm like, oh God, what do you want? Like,
Yeah.
like this is a lot of work. Can't I just sleep?
I always do the fun things usually.
Oh,
I have never gotten over the passive like flying immediately or,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
playing
yeah,
with it.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
You want to kind of bend reality when you're there.
yeah, of like what's possible. And it's
Mm.
been very interesting to realize what's not possible. Like
Oh, the
you're,
limitations,
mhm,
right? Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
like
I
trying
have.
to control a scene and things just starting to get chaotic and
I have a good friend who who was, I haven't seen him in a long time, but he was traditionally trained by Native American elder kind of medicine men. So when he was
Wow.
getting into lucid dreaming, he like was in a nightmare and he became lucid and he got all excited and sort of like, oh, I can change this. And then he heard
Yeah.
like a booming voice that was like, you think you're in control?
Oh my God. Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, that was always like a warning for me, like, be careful.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. We
Yeah.
think we know, and then something shakes that. And that's, that's why we're what we're really talking about today.
Yeah. So
Um,
lucid dreaming was kind of a door for you
I
and
think it, yeah, I think it kind of started there, and did have some altered states experiences starting in college. Um,
was that like fun or was it more exploratory?
yeah, it was
Like just having a
always,
good time, kind of altered states?
well, it was usually in nature.
Oh, okay. You were smart. You weren't like at
Yeah.
parties and stuff.
Nope, never at parties. It was always very like the right place with the right person or people.
Was that
Um,
intuitive for you to kind of know set and setting, or did you wait? Hold on, I just want to pause. We're going to be talking about psychedelics, right? That's
yes.
like why we're together. And just
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll
yeah,
probably I'll probably dance the saying it without saying it.
yeah. I just wanted to like let people know that like that's what we're dancing around as we talk as psychedelics, and we'll eventually move into kind of your work doing psychedelic integration work as a therapist.
hmm
But you were in college, and like my curiosity there was like, did you like study set and setting and like how to make a trip kind of beneficial? Was it more intuitive?
No, and I'm not even sure. It was a boyfriend at the time who like kind of opened that door. And I don't know how it was, if he suggested or if we just kind of decided together, like, let's go camping and
Yeah.
do this. And so it was, immediately apparent to me, like, just how awe-inspiring, those experiences can be.
Mm-hmm.
um, and over the years that's kind of moved through different um, like different purposes for me.
Yeah, you had
um,
different types of relationships with
mhm.
is there a word for you? Is it psychedelic or
Yeah,
and
I typically say psychedelics.
yeah, I go with entheogens a bit, but
That's a good one too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're lucid dreaming, kind of opening up to exploring consciousness with
hmm
psychedelics,
hmm
becoming a clinician, and
Yeah, and the float shop, is also like learning about floating,
oh,
sensory deprivation floats. So the reason I started my practice out of the float shop here in Portland, Oregon, was kind of a fun coincidence of the person who founded the float shop I happened to camp next to at Sasquatch Music Festival
mm.
like years ago. And thank you, Facebook. Like, we stayed in touch. And I was like, what is this floating? And you hear about the movie that um,
The
featured
altered
Altered
states.
States, yeah,
Yeah,
which,
yeah. I can't remember his name ever, but yeah.
yeah, it's pretty trippy. And so I heard these things about floating, and because I'm curious in these, altered states of being, I was like, wow, this is really interesting, and didn't try it for a long time. And eventually, the owner was like, come have a float, try it out. And it was like just after a breakup, and I was like, oh God, what's gonna come up? Like, am
Oh
I gonna
yeah.
go in there and be alone? This is before I had ever done much meditating, and
Which is a basic kind of fear for folks, right? Like
yeah,
I'm gonna open up and I'm scared what's there.
yeah, like, am I just gonna be like lost in my grief, like for 90
Oh,
minutes in the
yeah.
dark?
Yeah, like you're gonna be drowning in it, kind of
Yeah,
metaphorically.
exactly. So it was after that, and it wasn't anything kind of terrible or phenomenal. It was like just
Yeah.
kind of nice.
I've had that experience floating too, where it's like,
Yeah,
wait, did anything happen? And then I get out and I'm like, oh, well, like I feel a little better and
I
like
feel
my
nice.
senses are sharper and I'm more relaxed. So I think something
Yeah,
happened.
yeah, exactly. But I was so like worried about it that I scheduled a therapy session immediately afterwards, because
Oh,
like,
like if you had to work through things.
yeah, I was like, I might have stuff to process. But that's when I was like, oh, like, you guys should have a therapist here,
Oh
like,
yeah,
because
yeah.
they were just starting to bring in like acupuncture and massage, and the whole dream was this wellness center. And it's
How
like,
long ago was
oh,
this when you sort of integrated into the float shop?
that was 2013.
Oh, so like kind of right when you're graduating and
Right when I started. Yeah, I was
oh,
trying to find a postdoc, never found a postdoc. And
did it have a feeling of synchronicity for you? Like it was kind of
mhm,
opening up and like this
yeah,
was your path for a while?
it was really beautiful because it was also the float shop that clued me into like psychedelic assisted therapy. And again, like a happenstance sort of way, there was a float conference kind of shortly after I first started at the float shop, and they invited me and I attended because I'm like, there's interesting research being done and I'm curious. And
Mm-hmm.
there was a table for MAPS, Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, at the conference. And I was like, oh, like, what?
Oh yeah, like
I
a sort of like, wait, is this possible? I
was
can like
like, this
integrate
is
like,
happening? Like,
yeah,
psychedelic research is happening?
yeah, happening
Um,
again, right? Like
mhm.
the set, like what do they call it? The second
Second
renaissance,
wave, yeah.
second wave. Thank you. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
hmm So I signed up for a membership, and you got a free book from the table if you signed up. And I took LSD psychotherapy by, Stanislav Grof.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and kind of again, the like how it unfolded a few months later, I first met my husband, and he was living with a guy who volunteered with the Zendo Project, who does harm reduction services at festivals like Burning Man.
And that's an
Um,
offshoot of maps, is that right?
yeah, I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure they're kind of under the MAPS umbrella,
Mm-hmm.
and get funding through MAPS and that sort of thing. He was in Students for Sensible Drug Policy, so he was like, this was his career dream. And I so again, it was like, oh right, MAPS, because I kind of almost forgot about it a little bit after
Oh
that
yeah, like there
first.
was a little pop in the beginning and
Yeah,
then it faded and then he kind of brought it back into your awareness a
yeah.
bit.
So again, it's like, the clues were drawing me in. And it was at that point that I was like, I really need to like stake a claim to this for myself. Like I really wanted, and it was based on, my own experiences of, these substances are extremely powerful, and when used intentionally, can bring great insights and window into different ways of being, that
Mm-hmm.
sometimes people have never experienced before.
Yeah, like the John Hopkins research, right? These are
Mm-hmm.
either the most or the second most potent, like rememberable experiences of people's
Right,
lives, with only like
right,
giving birth to a child being the one that's
right.
usually more
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes
like I
higher.
don't know, I gave birth to my kid or I did some mushrooms in a study. Like it's hard to say which was more important.
Yeah, exactly. And, for anybody who's had an experience like that, it's, very easy to understand, why people feel that way.
And for you, like from that initiation of camping and exploring altered states, and it sounds like you maintain contact with psychedelics through that. Like, was there an evolution in your set and setting and approach to it, especially as you move towards contemplating sort of integrating it into your psychotherapeutic work?
hmm Yeah, so it was still, a long time ago that things kind of shifted, but there was a time when I started having solo spiritual experiences for the
Yeah.
first time, because it had always been with other people. And there was one night that I wound up by myself because everybody was done for the night. And
I would do that a lot when I was a teenager. I would just be like,
yeah.
you guys are too much for me. And I would just like walk away. And everyone would be like, where did Brandon go? And I'd be like on some hill alone by myself.
Well, I apparently needed to be forced into that
Oh no,
because
I don't think it's a good part of my personality that I can't like hang out with other people.
yeah.
Yeah. But
So there was this night that I wound up alone, kind of back at my apartment by myself, and it was extremely powerful. Just being with myself, and uh, I honestly don't even remember what came up, but I remember there being this like light bulb of, oh, this isn't just something to go hiking with or to like
Yeah.
be
Have like
goofy
a
with friends.
yeah, like have a deeper group kind of playful bonding experience.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. And then
So
did you
then,
start to explore solo work from there?
yeah, it was the first time that I did it was life changing. Like
The first time you sort
truly.
of intentionally were like, I'm going to do
Hmm.
this alone and
Yep.
set intention and
Yep,
kind of
exactly.
be open for the ride that's going to happen.
Exactly, yeah. And my intentions are not what I got out of it.
Oh, never, right? Never.
Right. I can't even remember what they were, but what ended up happening was, so a few months earlier, my cousin had committed suicide.
Oh.
He was a veteran, and I don't know the details of what really went on for him, but I hadn't talked to him in many years, and I had this kind of cerebral devastation about what happened. But when I was in the trip, he came to mind and came into my heart, and I had this deep.
His presence was with you.
It wasn't his presence; it was what he must have been feeling to do that.
Oh, you kind of had a reliving experience a bit, or kind of tapping into his
it
state of
it was
mind.
just like the empathy, like a
Yeah.
really deep visceral empathy of what you must be feeling to not want to live anymore,
Mm.
to be totally done with this existence,
Mm-hmm.
which was incredibly sad. And but kind of on its heels was this realization that I have carried a lifelong death anxiety,
Mm.
that I wasn't really aware of. It like came out through um, lots of journaling, like getting my story down and wanting to like make the most of my life and all this kind of pressure
Oh,
on
like this
life.
sort of achievement,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe not just achievement, but like full living energy, but which can feel like good and positive,
Right,
but like kind
especially in
of
our
be
society,
yeah, yeah,
like
like, oh,
good
look
for
at that,
you,
Sarah's
yeah.
really crushing in life. She's so on top of it.
And I'm terrified of dying.
Yeah, yeah. So you could kind of feel the this energy behind that was
Yeah,
motivating it.
exactly. So it was like the veil was kind of lifted about what that was and where it came from in my life. And I just had this deep recognition, like I need to work with this.
Hmm.
I need to come to terms with this, because I don't want to live my whole life in like kind of a chronic state of anxiety about the end. Um,
Yeah, I really love what you're saying in a way. And one of the kind of meanings I'm taking as you talk is like you do the solo work for the first time and something's revealed to you, but you don't stop there. Like that was
no,
like a
yeah,
door. It wasn't like the healing, right? Like you're like, oh, my death
right,
anxiety, and now I'm good, and now I'm gonna go back to
yeah,
achieving. You're
yeah.
like, it sounded like that started a long journey of sort of exploring and discovering and healing.
Very much, yeah. And it is beautiful, because in some of the studies, people are coming specifically for death anxiety, like the cancer patients,
Mm-hmm.
and they actually do have a cessation of that. Some of them have a total cessation of the anxiety and the fear.
Yeah, those
Um,
experiences of kind of being held by love or
mhm.
life or
Death's not
God,
the
if
end. Yeah.
yeah, and they kind of just know it, and it
Hmm.
seems there's some relaxation. I haven't tasted death in that way, so I don't know the
Yeah.
fear that's there myself.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So, but for me, it was like this door that was opened, and I learned about death cafes shortly after
Wait,
that.
what are
And
death cafes?
yeah, well, it's like a worldwide movement for people to just gather and talk about death.
No shit.
Hmm.
Oh, that's so
Yeah,
cool. Were you going to those in Portland, or are they an
I went
online?
to I went to a few in Portland. I haven't been to one in a long time, but
Yeah.
I've always remembered them and kind of know that they're there for me.
And
Um,
what shifted for you as you began to relate to death in a different way?
it was essentially like, oh, like I want to have a conscious relationship with the fact that I'm going to die.
Yeah. And when, I try to connect to death, I had like it was like a silly moment when I turned 30. I was Googling face creams because I was like, I think I saw like a wrinkle or something in the mirror. And I'm a dude. I don't like not a lot of that in my life, you know, like I just started
Yeah.
using conditioner recently.
Uh-huh.
And I
Uh-huh.
remember like Googling it, and I was actually at work. I used to do work with clients where they would sometimes take naps and like I would be
Uh-huh.
alone. So I was like at
Uh-huh.
work, but I was Googling. And as I was Googling, I was like, oh fuck.
It's all downhill from here.
Or more like, oh, I'm gonna die.
Oh yeah.
Like just like in the
It
like
just,
looking, yeah, it just kind of hit me. And I'd been a
yeah.
Buddhist for quite a while, so it was like you're supposed to think about death. I always like
Yeah.
tried to think about death, and it was the
Right.
first moment of like, ooh,
Yeah.
yeah, this is
There it
finite.
is. There it
This is
is.
finite. Like I gotta
Mm-hmm.
come to terms with this.
Right.
Yeah. And for you, what was there when you kind of
Um, well, it was, I mean, really what it ultimately has been about is like, oh, I like always want to have that perspective. I always want to try to remember like we don't get forever, and not like squeeze it, you know, for all it is, but like hold it a little more gently, and remember not to take things so seriously. Um,
yeah, like it helps with the constriction or sort of
mhm.
tightness that can happen at times.
Yeah. Yeah, like, oh, I don't want this to be my lived experience.
Oh yeah, like you got this life. Why
Hmm.
why kind of dwell on
Like,
the
this
suffer?
definitely doesn't matter, or oh, there's a different way to deal with this, or
Yeah.
like there's a bigger picture essentially.
Oh, that's really cool. Like it gives you perspective to kind of relate to when life is a struggle and like
Hmm.
maybe you're contributing to that in some ways.
Yeah,
Oh.
definitely.
Yeah, like all fucking always, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, when you talk, I think about like a lot of people I hear talk about death, that this irony that like when we really relate to death, we're actually relating to living
Hmm.
and to like living more fully.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So you have start doing the one-on work, or sorry, solo work, like you
Hmm.
have this death experience,
Hmm.
and maps is kind of in the mix, and
Yeah,
like
I
it.
started tracking maps. I volunteered with the Zendo project at Burning Man 1 year or a couple
Mm,
years.
what was that
Um,
like? That seems like I'm not a festival person. I've always
yeah. Oh,
like
you'd
that's the
hate Burning Man then.
yeah, I'm always like I'll go to a 2 day one if I go to one because
Yeah.
that's a long time to be hanging out there.
It's kind of like a journey in the same sense of like, there might be some fun parts or some interesting parts, but there's also like really hard parts, and you
Yeah,
kind of, want it to be over at a certain point, or
yeah, dirty and
um, oh,
dusty.
dirty, yeah, really
Yeah.
inconvenient.
Yeah, what was that? So that was like maybe one of the first times you stepped in a support role.
Yeah, there had been times, a long time ago with friends, but I mean, the person that I ended up sitting with, because there's times when it's like there's nothing to do, and
Yeah,
you're just there in
which
case.
is like that's so cool, right? Like, oh, everyone's
Yeah,
having a good time right now.
yeah, exactly, exactly. But this guy, I probably should not give too many details, even though it's not a client, but he had really left this plane. And
He was somewhere else.
he was somewhere else, but he had also like managed to drive his RV in that state, and like that's how he ended up in the Zendo. So it was a whole thing. But by the time I sat with him, he wasn't really verbal, but he was clearly trying to communicate with me.
Like he was reaching out in a way.
Yeah, he was like definitely wanting to like, see what I was about, and um, I don't remember a lot of the details about how we did it because it was really nonverbal, but somehow I managed to kind of help him feel safe, and
Mm,
started to kind of try to ask him to describe like what had happened, because he even like kind of disconnected from that.
mm.
And slowly the narrative started coming back of like where he was and what happened, and um, but yeah, it was pretty intense, and I got some kudos from other people because when he first came in, I mean, he was like not reachable. So
Mm-hmm.
that felt good because it was nothing I had ever experienced. And, but there's kind of, a bit of an intuition of like just seeing how your energy is coming together with someone else's. And what they're responding to or what they're not responding to, and just
Yeah,
making those.
that really subtle relational dance,
Mm-hmm.
especially when someone's in a much more sort of heightened, attuned state.
Yeah, exactly. They're going to notice.
Yeah, yeah. I did a lot of
Mm-hmm.
work for years at an organization called Windhorse that works with people in
Mm.
extreme states.
Mm-hmm.
And like we do this thing called basic attendance, where I would spend 3 hours at a time with somebody that's in and out of extreme states. And I was really
Mm-hmm.
just learning how to be present and
Mm-hmm.
not make waves in someone else's
Yeah,
life, like
exactly.
like be try to be a non-threatening presence.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
For
yeah.
sure.
Yeah, so you have this experience with the Zendo project that like kind of first step into helping someone that
Yeah.
wasn't a friend, and it sounds like you've felt a naturalness there, and that was validated by others around you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, honestly, being a Gestalt therapist goes a long way,
You
because
have some
those
good
skills,
foundational training.
yes, of being with and not trying to make anything happen and not, just turning toward the present moment as it is
Yeah.
with curiosity and compassion.
Mm-hmm. Like not being afraid of contact and being
Mm-hmm.
with someone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where did things unfold from you there? Like when, because like by the time I knew you, you were somebody that was open about doing psychedelic integration work.
Yeah. So I can't remember when I, you know, hung the card out, or
Yeah.
whatever the phrase is.
Yeah, like put the page on your website or
Yeah,
whatever.
exactly. I think it was around that time. So it was quite a few years ago now, like 2014, maybe 2015. It might have been 2015 when I was actually licensed and not under my supervisors.
Yeah, when you
When I
felt a
felt
little
like,
more
okay,
freedom.
yeah, like I'm not going to kind of associate that with you. Like, this is my practice now. But it was still like, it wasn't in vogue yet.
Yeah, no, that's one of the things I'm so like there's some pieces I want to talk to you about. Like you're like an
Yeah.
early adopter of something in a way.
Yeah.
Like not really. I mean, there's like
Right,
all,
right,
but like
exactly.
in being visible. Like
Hmm.
you like had a license and we're doing
Yeah.
clinical work and also acknowledge that you do psychedelic integration work.
Yeah.
Like
So,
before like all the movies are out now and all the newspaper
for the
articles and
books
everyone's
and,
like, yeah, Michael
yeah,
Pollan and how to change your
exactly.
mind, and everyone's like, oh,
Hmm.
psychedelics are good. It's like,
Right.
yeah, we've been saying that for a long time.
Yeah, exactly. So 2015 was probably when I did that. And I think 2015 was also, I helped organize a Gestalt conference here in
Mm.
Portland.
Yeah, I attended that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you remember, I was on the kind of intro panel.
Yeah, yeah. There were
Um,
elders and newcomers kind of.
hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't remember if I intended to say it, but it ended up coming out that, like, I'm interested in psychedelic assisted therapy, and I think it really goes very well with Gestalt therapy. Um, and I like said it in front of a crowd.
Yeah, there was hundreds of people in that audience.
Yeah. And I remember feeling just, really nervous in my body, but I was like, this is happening and I want to be a part of it, and I want to like destigmatize it.
Oh,
And it was also from like the harm reduction standpoint of people are using these substances
it's
anyway.
already happening.
Yeah. And we might as well give them better resources and places to make that, useful for them, and affirming, rather than, what we know can happen without the proper support, which is sometimes devastating.
Yeah. Yeah, I have experience of devastation. It can be really
Right.
rough.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's something in what you said there that I really appreciate. And not even in the psychedelic nature, but like you wanted to do this, you saw value in this, and you were scared.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like something in you just kind of said it for you almost. Like not totally, but you're like, oh God, did I just do that?
Yeah.
But then you were like, it sounds like you relaxed into it, like, no, I want to do this. This is like what I want my life to be in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And
I
like,
was definitely on the cliff of like, are you all in?
yeah,
You
yeah. And it sounds like over time you've become more all in.
As much as, I can, still within
Yeah, the
the
legal kind of,
exactly. So like, there's of course people who are doing underground work, and I made a pretty clear decision, like I'm just not gonna do that. I'm too
yeah.
early in my career. Like I'm the breadwinner in my family.
Yeah, like you want your license, you want your the
Yeah,
insurance money to keep
yeah,
coming.
exactly. So I'm like, I'll just wait till the time comes. And but in the meantime, I'm gonna name that, like, this is a thing. People deserve support. There's research that's like it. I wanted to add a voice of legitimacy to the whole thing.
Hmm.
Um, mhm.
Yeah, and then it seems you started like seeing folks to do not assisted therapy, but integration
Mhm.
work.
Yeah. So at that point, what it looked like, my claim was on my website. There was one line that said, I help people, process and integrate significant experiences, including spiritual awakenings, psychedelic journeys, trauma.
Hmm.
That was the line. And
Basically, like you do therapy.
I do therapy. Exactly. And that's kind of why I ended up, like, how I reassured myself is like, I'm just doing therapy.
Yeah,
And this is good therapy.
but
Like,
like opening different doors of things folks can
mhm.
bring into the therapeutic space.
Exactly. Yeah. Because what I realized is, around that time too, like, if you're not putting it out there, people are scared to talk about it, even in a confidential therapy space.
Yeah, I just read like a Medium article the other day of some woman that was like basically like my therapist couldn't hold the fact that I like had a positive psychedelic journey and just thought it was drug use. And like please, like
Exactly.
calling out therapists in this article, like please therapists do some
Right.
research. Old people. She said he was old.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So at that point, I changed my paperwork, because I had, in my intake paperwork, like, what's your substance use look like? And I changed it very specifically to say, I'm interested in what your relationship is with different substances. Some of them might be positive, some of them might be neutral, some of them negative. And like, please,
Some all of those mixed
yeah,
together.
some both. But the idea was like, hey, I get it. Like, there might be certain substances that you don't have a problem with.
Yeah,
Um,
I worked at a fairly like I consider progressive group practice, like like
mhm,
was an employee, and on
mhm.
their substance use, it was like amphetamines, speed, and LSD, or like something like because there was different categories, like
Yeah,
and those were grouped together, and I'm like, I'm not gonna check the LSD box next to the amphetamine box. Like I'm not
yeah,
like I
that
don't want to
doesn't
be
make sense.
associated with
Yeah.
amphetamines and like PCP. I think it was like amphetamines, PCP, and LSD.
Oh my goodness.
And I like
Yeah.
brought it to their attention. They're like, "Oh, this is just how it's like done on all the forms." And I'm like, "Well, can we not do that, please?"
Yeah, this is incorrect.
Yeah, could there be like a different section at least to acknowledge
Uh-huh.
psychedelics that's not linked to PCP?
Right.
Like, I don't know. Maybe there's good use of PCP. I don't know.
I've heard actually recently that there is, but
Yeah, yeah. I
I
read
don't know much
Ram Dass
about
did
it.
like a PCP journey in India, like
Oh
in
my
his
goodness.
memoirs. He's like, "Oh, it was really
Wow.
great."
Yeah.
So yeah, so
So
you're changing the flavor of the invitation, like what people can bring in, and like letting it be
exactly.
transparent that this is
Hmm.
not something that needs to be hidden in a way or
Right.
shameful about.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And because it was 2015, literally just that one line on my website, I'm now one of the top hits when you Google like psychedelic therapy Portland,
Oh,
even though I don't do
yeah,
it.
yeah. I actually looked at your website when I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I want to talk to Sarah about this," and
Yeah.
you were like, "I don't guide journeys."
Right. Right.
Like, I just love that you had to put that in there. Like, please don't reach out to me to find someone.
Which, like, sadly, like, yay, Measure 109 that just
Hmm.
passed recently in Oregon. That,
Can you say a little bit about Measure 109 for folks?
yeah. So I think they refer to it as psilocybin therapy,
Mm-hmm.
which, they're now in the process of forming standards for people to legally do psilocybin therapy, or I like to say, psilocybin assisted therapy
Mm-hmm.
here in Oregon.
Yeah.
But
First state to kind of
Yeah, first one, which is incredible, and I feel so lucky.
And psilocybin was decriminalized on that same
All drugs.
all
Well,
drugs.
not that bill. They took that out of that particular
You know,
bill,
it
but
was in a
another
different.
one.
Yeah,
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 110, or I can't remember.
yeah.
So
You can
yeah,
see where
so
my mind's at. I'm like, psilocybin was decriminalized, but it's really like
yeah,
all drugs are decriminalized.
yeah, which I think is
We're
important.
like, oh, that's the one I care about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, the day that passed, basically, people thought it was
Like,
open
oh,
season.
oh yeah, like, and you're the first Google hit.
Yes. So, as you can imagine, I got a lot of inquiries, and I still get them even as I've like updated my website to give more information about what Measure 109 even means, which most people don't realize is there's a 2-year period where we have to figure out, or rather a committee is figuring out how this is going to look and who can do it, and in what, how,
And that
basically
doesn't even
how.
mean in 2 years it'll start. It just means it's like an
Exactly.
exploratory period until there's a experimentation or sort of
Exactly. Yeah.
refinement period.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
kept having to tell people, like, unfortunately, that's still not an option, at least legally. And I'm, not going to be pursuing that until it is legal. So,
Yeah. But if we
mhm.
go back to 2015 and you have it on your website and you're sort
Yeah.
of trying to normalize and validate
Mm-hmm.
this as a means of exploring healing and
Mm-hmm.
or at least significant life experience.
Right. Right.
What did you see kind of change in your practice through kind of opening the doors to psychedelics being a valid thing to bring into the room?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I had some clients already that I was seeing that already had a relationship with psychedelics, and just started to have more conversations with folks about it, and them coming and saying, like, I think I'm going to have a trip soon, and me being like,
Mm,
okay, what do you want out of it? Where are you going to do it? Who are you going to do it with? Like, how are you going to ensure your safety, and not just physical safety, but emotional safety, and um, work through the harm reduction stuff with them, while also working through, like, what are your intentions? um, Also helping people back it up if their intentions are kind of too specific,
oh,
which
oh, like
that,
a kind of ground what's grounded a bit, what's actually possible, or sort of
yeah, like, don't set yourself up for disappointment, basically.
I'm gonna
Like,
heal all of my childhood wounding.
exactly, I'm not going to be depressed ever again.
I'm gonna become
um,
love after this.
yeah, exactly. So help people kind of like find that sweet spot of, there being something intentional about it, but not kind of gripping it too tightly, for so that they can actually take what it is and not overlook something because it's not what they thought it would be.
And would they bring back their journeys to you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How was that to start to explore sort of what it means to therapeutically be with a journey?
Yeah. Well, it's always funny because just describing a journey is impossible.
Yeah, I saw a meme from Tim Harris recently where it was like this beautiful stallion. He's like, my mushroom trip. And then the next page over meme was like a toy stallion. And he's
Yeah.
like, me trying to talk about it.
Yeah, for sure.
Like it never comes out that well.
Right, the word ineffable, is always used
Yeah.
because words just don't capture it.
Mm-mm.
But we would try for them to describe what they felt they got out of it, what it was like for them. If there were difficult parts, understanding what that was about, and then kind of the biggest piece of the after, the integration work is, okay, like,
What now?
now that yeah, what next? You got this glimpse into um, love or interconnectedness, or you shifted how you saw yourself,
Yeah,
and
keep going. What do you see happening for folks? I mean, those are three
well,
really beautiful things, but like, what else do you see as someone that's kind of got to witness a number of journeys?
that it's really hard to hold on to, basically.
The fleeting nature of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because our default world, where we
Hmm.
have to go to work and deal with relationships and um, do housework and like it's
Yeah,
just
the nitty gritty of being a
Mhm.
human, but also being a human within our culture.
Exactly,
That
which is
adds like another layer of sort of struggle for me, at least.
suffering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like there's some extra unnecessary suffering happening.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always think of the book Jack Cornfield's After the Ecstasy, The Laundry, which
Mm-hmm.
is even what's really cool about that book is he does talk about psychedelics, but the bulk of it is interviewing these spiritual leaders from all traditions and
Yeah, a
all
lot of
over the
folks that
world.
had the glimpse in the 70s and
Hmm.
then pursued kind of more intensive spiritual practice.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And then have to deal with real life still.
Yeah, like be a janitor for 10 years after they were like a guru in India or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Or go
Yeah.
through divorce or go through depression.
Yeah, or like lose a child
Yeah,
or
exactly.
not be able to make money or all the things that
Hmm.
happen. Yeah. Mm.
So basically, what I really try to hone in on is like helping people figure out what practices or what, like, how are they going to keep holding space for this?
How to like make room to connect to what that experience was, even as it
Mm-hmm.
fades.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of
Yeah.
practices do you recommend for folks? I know it's probably specific to the individual and their history, but is there?
Mm-hmm. Meditation,
Yeah,
is
yeah.
definitely one of them.
Oh, like you should meditate.
Yeah. Or, or even just slowing down.
Mm,
Because the pace of life for most people is just incredibly fast, and there's always more things to take care of, and
yeah.
having quiet moments, having contemplative moments, whether it's meditation or journaling or
Or just not picking up your phone in the morning and having a
not
cup of
picking up the
tea for 10
phone.
minutes or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
walks in nature, or just walks in general. Like
Yeah.
um, for some folks, it would have to do with like recognitions about their relationship to their body
Mm,
and how they want to take care of their body. So movement, things around eating, or different kinds of self-care related to the body, um, relationship stuff like you know connecting more with other folks, being more intentional about that, um, gratitude practices,
mm.
playful
Yeah, like some
practices.
movement or
Yeah.
playful exploration in different ways.
Hmm. Like
Yeah.
having fun. um, so yeah, it kind of looks different for each person, but it's kind of honing in on the work's not done, because those grooves in your psyche, those neural networks,
Oh man,
like,
so entrenched, right?
hmm,
Yeah.
yeah, they don't get erased. You just now have other tracks that you can.
Or you like tasted another track.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
You like know there's a possibility for a different
Hmm.
one and like
You
here.
might find it again if you look for it.
Yeah, 10 years from now you might get another taste.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, I'm curious kind of like as someone that has worked with folks through this, like what do you see? Because you're describing the fleeting nature of these experiences at times, even though they're
Hmm.
so profound and mean so
Hmm.
much, they also fade so quickly,
Yeah,
which is always such a bummer. Um,
totally. Yeah,
yeah,
because it's so powerful.
yeah, we want to live there.
Yeah, and you just can't.
Yeah, well,
Um,
not yet, at least for me.
yeah, right, right. Some meditators, I think, probably have more of that than the average bear.
I always I wonder how much of that story and how much of that truth. But I'm curious, like as seeing different folks kind of go through that fleeting quality and it fading, like what do you see as like attitudes or ways of relating to that experience that help people to integrate it? Like what have you seen just in the people you work with that maybe help with that?
Yeah, well, let's see here. I feel like the people who um, I've seen get the most out of it have made significant changes, like, and probably the psychedelics have helped this, like around substance use, especially.
Mm.
So for someone who that's been kind of a part of what's been holding them back when they, when they can maintain that sobriety or return to sobriety or whatever level of, what works for them.
Yeah,
Um,
finding new relationship with substance, whether that's
mhm.
abstinence or reduction or
Right, right. More
yeah,
intentional use versus every night I do this.
yeah.
I've seen that go a really long way
Which is
too.
really hard for a lot of the mainstream to understand that
Yeah.
psychedelics
Right.
do really support, it seems, reduction in substance use.
Exactly. Yeah. I remember when I like came out on Facebook about wanting to do this kind of work, and a colleague of mine basically said like, you're saying people can essentially like improve their relationship to themselves by taking a substance. I was like, yes, I am. And I get that you don't understand that, but
Yeah, I mean, it's so obtuse from the psychotherapeutic world, right? Because we are so embedded in the distribution of substances,
mm-hmm,
whether like antidepressants, anti-anxiety pills, and those are so
mm-hmm.
accepted. But it's like, oh no, these psychedelics, those are drugs.
Those are drugs, and people only use drugs to alter themselves and to get away from reality and to get
Yeah,
away from themselves.
yeah. Which,
Mm-hmm.
if anyone's taken a psychedelic, like it's very hard to do that on a psychedelic.
Right. That is not what you've signed up for.
No, if you
Mm-hmm.
think that's what's happening, like I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
you've seen it help with folks kind of change their relationships or move to abstinence with substances.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It leaves more room to
Mm.
be present in their lives, and to give that just more space to unfold. Um,
Like almost making a choice and structural choices, like changing patterns of living to make more room for presence
mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
noticing the things that we do that take us out of presence, whether that's
Yes.
substances or other sort of addictive patterns of
Mm-hmm.
media use or
Mm-hmm.
always being in relationship with people or
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an excellent way of putting it.
yeah, cool.
Yeah, and then I think I also see people get the most out of it when it's accompanied by like a kind of a broader spiritual, um, interest, or like essentially people who are looking for the real meaning of life. Like,
Mm.
what is this about? Is it about us always getting our way and always feeling happy and good, or is it about really coming to terms with like life as it is? And when people have kind of that openness, nobody likes that. Like, nobody likes to deal with everything about life that sucks and is painful.
Yeah,
um,
like life.
exactly. Life. um, when you recognize that there's value in it, and there's freedom in it, um, I think that kind of also helps kind of hold the door open, like where people aren't kind of clinging to what they think they need, and they're more open to just the unfolding or the flow of life.
Mm. Like you can see a shift in folks where their even attitude towards healing and change shifts a bit from like an I driven mentality of like what I want towards getting on board maybe with the change that's happening or like
Mm-hmm.
what's unfolding already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. Because sometimes it's, I've seen some people have some like realizations about themselves that really caught them by surprise, and um, being open to just letting that be, because usually that's distressing. And I've seen people have like an attitude of, I don't need to figure this out right away, like I can just kind of let it, like, okay, that happened, I saw that, in the midst of my journey. And I'm just going to kind of let it let it be.
Yeah, here and there sort of like trust and relaxation
Mm-hmm.
around the process.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. Do you see like I imagine folks are bringing all types of different psychedelics into what they do the work with? Like,
Yeah.
do you see a difference in the sort of different,
Oh gosh.
because I like these days, you know, I took a 10-year gap where I didn't really engage much, and I usually just, when I do hang out, I hang out with my like psilocybin.
Hmm.
I just the one I sort of gravitate towards. So I'm always curious,
Hmm.
like, what are these other ones doing?
Yeah, interesting. I haven't reflected on it deeply enough to see if there's
like
reliable.
like personality kind of quality to it, or
Yeah.
like if they're sometimes considered doctors, right? Like, what's the better doc? Like, this doctor is good for that. That doctor is good for that.
I think what's nice about, that there are different kind of flavors of psychedelics, or psychedelic experiences. It means that there's, potentially something that fits for a person. Like for one
Oh,
person, it would be ayahuasca and the ceremony of ayahuasca.
yeah.
For another person, it might be like one-on-one with a guide around psilocybin or LSD or MDMA. Um, so there's kind of different containers that
Mm-hmm.
people typically
There's like
use with different.
options of
Hmm.
containers that people can gravitate to based
Yeah.
on their life experience and personality.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it does kind of say a little bit about like what somebody's ready for, like the vulnerability of being in a group or to do kind of maybe something more intense. Like typically people are a little more intimidated by ayahuasca because of the purging and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it kind of reveals more about the person and what they decide to go with than necessarily like what it does for them.
Yeah, yeah. Sort of uh what what ride they're willing to get on the
Yeah,
amusement park. Like, oh, that one looks,
exactly.
whoa, I'm not doing that one.
Yeah. Pick psilocybin if they want a shorter ride versus LSD, they want a longer ride. And
Yeah, yeah. Huh. Yeah. Where do you like in what we're talking about? Is there anything in here that feels important to you, where you want to hang out with? And
I guess it's just fun to be having this
oh,
conversation.
okay, cool. I just wanted to check in if there's somewhere you like feel
Well,
is important.
I mean, just specifically, like because it has been a long journey for me as a professional person, getting to talk about this with people and getting to be more out.
Yes.
There's a real shift happening where
And you've
you
been like
know
in that shift, right? Like you said, like 20, like it seems in the last 2 years there's been a dramatic shift, and in the last
huge.
5 years with the, because the beginnings of research, right? And then research takes a
Hmm.
while to permeate out.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just think it's cool that like we feel comfortable enough as therapists to
I
have
don't
this
know.
be in the world.
I don't know if I feel comfortable. I'm
Well,
uncomfortable. You know what I mean? I'm always like, well,
right.
I hope no one from my licensure board watches
There
this
is that.
obscure podcast.
Yeah, there is that because there are still some question people. I've been a part of this health professions meetup through the Portland Psychedelic Society,
Uh-huh.
and that in the earlier days of that meetup was just a huge part of the conversation. Is like, can we can we be honest about this with the public, or like are we going to get in trouble?
Mm-hmm.
um,
And you see that shifting for yourself and in your own comfort level?
I do. Part of, I mean, it's not totally comfortable, but part of a huge thing that actually helped was there's a local organization called Portland Therapy Center
Mm-hmm.
that has a like a profile website, and they
Yeah.
created a new one recently called Therapy Den, and it's where you go to find a therapist. And
Mm-hmm.
they now have a search function to find someone who does psychedelic integration.
Oh, that's cool. I might throw
Hmm.
myself on that list.
Yeah, you should. There need to be more people on that list. Um, so there's just like more and more legitimacy to like this is happening. It's not like we should be able to help people. We should be able to support them. Um,
And I feel like we should, to some degree, be able to be honest about our own calling to this work.
yeah, yeah,
Like,
that would be nice.
I think most people want their therapist to have done therapy.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
which doesn't always happen.
No, it doesn't. I was just saying that to my therapist the other day. Like, that blows my mind.
But I
That,
remember looking at, I don't know if it was MAPS or one of the other sort of psilocybin assisted therapies that's emerging, that like they have the option to do one journey if they'd like, but they don't need to.
oh, really? It's an option? I thought it was required.
I think it's different for different
Okay.
organizations. This was just like
Yeah.
one of the ones I was looking at, and I'm like, what?
Hmm.
Like one, like,
Hmm.
and like you don't have to. Like what?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like how that blew my mind a bit.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's something very unique about those. And I think, Michael Pollan's book really did kind of speak to this, is just the difference between having tried it and not. And like, someone who hasn't tried it has a really hard time understanding what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you've tried it, I think and hopefully had a good experience, of course, there's a little more trust that, yeah, this is a substance that's really workable and really, offers a lot of promise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm curious, I have this sort of pet theory just around therapists in general, that when they choose to become a therapist, life is going to do some work on them to help them become a therapist. And then some people bow out in that process, like, fuck this. Like, I don't want to go through this.
Uh-huh.
You're laughing makes me think that resonates a little bit, but
Well, I'm just always looking for the work.
yeah, yeah.
So,
Well, I think not everyone has that mentality, right? And then they become
yeah.
therapists, and they're like, "Why is this so hard? These last 2 years?" And
Hmm.
it's like, "Oh, you're getting trained.
Yeah.
You're
Right.
being
We are the instrument, we are the tool.
yeah." Have you
That's,
felt for yourself like your tool being worked on differently as you've chosen to kind of relate to psychedelics within the therapeutic setting?
it's hard to tease apart, because, like, in addition to, you know, being open to helping people with psychedelic work, there's also like all my spiritual practices and my spiritual work and death work.
Yeah,
Um,
the personal work you've engaged in through this.
yeah. And I feel like that, kind of generally speaking, has all come together to um, really humble me.
Oh, yeah, you've been humbled, you mean?
I've been humbled for sure.
Yeah, I fucking hate that, right? It's not
Yeah.
fun. Like, oh.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely over the years less about like, I'm going to help you fix this, which was never the basis of my therapeutic orientation, because Gestalt is really not about that, but it's that achiever in me, that,
Mm-hmm.
and that, the empathy of seeing someone suffering.
Yeah, there's a
And
genuineness there and wanting to help, but there's also
yeah, like, let's be
wanting to be
successful.
good at
Yeah,
being a
I
helper.
want to be a good therapist. Exactly. And in doing my own work and realizing just how sticky conditioning is, where
Yes.
for most people, psychedelics aren't going to fix it, and meditation isn't going to, fix it, and you're not going to like, transcend your humanity through all
Yeah.
of these things. It's
Yeah, they're not tools to bypass.
exactly.
And that's been helpful for you in your journey to kind of relax
Yeah.
into the stickiness of being human, and that humanness ain't
Hmm.
going anywhere.
Exactly. Yeah. Of just being more open to, like, okay, this is what it is, and can we get curious and just relate to it differently, perhaps,
Mm,
versus like get rid of it or beat it into submission.
yeah. And is that something you liked? I don't know the right languaging, but hope to transmit when you are a therapist, of this sort of curiosity and interest without
Hmm.
this sort of grasping quality of wanting it to change or needing it to be different to be better.
Hmm. That's always my hope. That's always where I'm trying to be grounded.
Yeah.
But it can be hard to kind of hold that ground sometimes when people are really suffering and really struggling.
Yeah, that's always a struggle for me. I really believe what happens to us kind of happens for a reason, not to kind of normalize the horribleness of the world, but
Hmm. We
like
might as well get something out of it, and like,
yeah, yeah, like this is our healing. This is the
hmm,
ground of our healing. And sometimes it's really hard to hold that mentality when people are like really in it,
Oh yeah, for sure.
to like see this as helpful,
Yeah.
and that it's going to bring someone to, hopefully more openness or kindness or appreciation or
Mm-hmm.
understanding, like the things that
Mm-hmm.
seem to happen to us when we uh, integrate the things that have happened to us.
Right. Take life as it is.
Yeah, yeah. That's a big one for you, right? Take life as it is.
I'm trying, man. It's never what I want it to be, so I keep having to try to come around to what it is.
Yeah, yeah. So, like, uh, kind of in a practical way, what do you see like the principles of harm reduction if someone is going to be taking psychedelics for personal growth or even for fun,
Mm.
right? It
Yeah.
doesn't need to be hoity-toity like I'm going to
Right.
get enlightened on these psychedelics,
Right.
but like what do you see as kind of the basics that sort of support someone in hopefully having a safe journey?
Mm-hmm. Well, especially like coming from the clinical perspective, there are some issues that people have that I think psychedelics just aren't a good idea.
Sort of the contraindications of folks that that's not
Yeah.
going to be beneficial for.
Mm-hmm. Things like, you know, if somebody has delusions or anything in the flavor of schizophrenia, sometimes bipolar, like if they've had, manic episodes where they've lost touch with reality. They're just dicey. They're dicey experiences, and I've seen that really not work for people.
Oh, like it kind
Um,
of propels them further into the lostness of extreme
yeah,
states.
it does. It just does not help, at the
Yeah.
very least. And those are times when I'll give pretty clear advice, like
Like
I
if
really
someone
don't
comes
think
to
that's.
you, yeah.
Mm-hmm. But whether they listen to me or not is a whole other thing.
And for
Um,
you, is that a black and white thing, or is that more of a gray area? Like, do you think that somebody that has had sort of periods of extreme states, whether that's meets a clinical diagnosis or not, can at some point use psychedelics, or is it sort of an always off the table?
I have no idea because I can't presume to think I know
Yeah,
everything about that.
yeah.
And I could imagine there being certain situations where that could be done without harm.
Mm.
But it's just, I mean, it's always the thing with psychedelics that you're kind of rolling the dice.
Yeah, yeah.
Like there's ways to get your odds be better, but you just really never know what is going to happen and what's going to open up.
Yeah, and if like folks have a disposition to these experiences, whether that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of meets a medical diagnosis, right? Bipolar or schizophrenia or something. I try to
Yeah,
move away from that in my own
me
language.
too.
But
Right. There's
but
spectrums of,
yeah,
experiences that.
yeah. I sometimes think folks have like a disposition to porousness or a
Okay. Uh-huh.
or a disposition to like more scientifically like open neural gating, like they
Uh-huh.
take in more sensory information and then that gets
Yeah.
overwhelming, and like
Yeah.
taking a psychedelic doesn't really help with that.
Right. It's disorganizing. That's
Yeah,
actually why they're so helpful.
yeah,
If
like
disorganization is already your issue, mental disorganization,
mm-hmm.
yeah, that could maybe move you away from what you're hoping to get out of it.
Yeah, even when you use the dice metaphor too, like that there's a weightedness to these dice.
Mm-hmm.
There's like a greater propensity to get to
Right.
dysregulation or
Right.
disorganization.
Like in Michael Pollan's book, he talks about like entropy, like these substances create more entropy, more like, um, the usual grooves are not there. And so it's expansive in what can be a really destabilizing way for
Yeah.
some people.
And for folks, what helps them move through that destabilization in the safety sense? You were beginning to.
Yeah, yeah. Well, certainly, the kind of paradox with psychedelics being, now being looked at as this really powerful healing tool for especially like treatment resistant issues is it really helps to go in with some resources. And so obviously some people aren't in that position, of having kind of their own resources yet. That's kind of the whole issue of why they're
Okay.
wanting.
like a bit of a paradox there. Like it's helpful to have
Yeah,
resources, and the reason they need it is because they don't have resources.
exactly. And that's why I think, having for some people a trained, very experienced, person who's leading the session is so important.
Hmm.
Most people don't have access necessarily to that sort of thing.
Yeah, legality makes it difficult, right?
Yeah, yeah. So unless you're in these research trials,
Or,
um,
or you want to fly to Amsterdam or Holland or
yeah,
something.
right. Yeah. So if it is kind of you doing your own exploration, I think kind of packing your bags is really helpful. And what that can look like is possibly, if you can, starting to reduce some substance use, starting to try a meditation practice. Like the practice of sitting with what is very helpful when it comes to a psychedelic journey. Um, Having a person, whether it's a friend or somebody you've connected with through other means, like, we have psychedelic communities in a lot of
Mm.
places.
Like you might be able to reach out and find someone to sit or to be
Yep, a
available.
sitter, yeah,
Yeah.
someone who has a sense of what you would be needing if you were having a difficult moment. There are MAPS has guides for that,
Oh,
for
yeah. Like,
being with a person through a difficult psychedelic experience.
and there's hotlines now too, right? Or
There's I just learned about that. Yeah, there's a hotline you can call, so that's very cool. So
yeah.
like knowing what your resources are, or having a person there with you, or in the other room perhaps, if you want some
Yeah, I usually have my
solo
wife in
time.
the other room.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Um, you know, setting the intentions, like, are you like, what are you hoping to get out of this? And
Yeah, stick with that intentions, right? Because when you held it
mhm,
before, right, it seemed like you wanted to hold a bit of a middle way with intentions.
right.
Like it's good to have intentions, but it's good to be grounded in intentions. And like, what do you see like intentions and their role and like,
Yeah. It's I see intentions as an invitation. You're
mm-hmm.
like inviting something that you're seeking. And so it could be pretty basic. It could be like, I want to um, experience love for myself,
Oh,
or I
yeah,
want to connect with, um, the bigger picture in
yeah.
life. Um,
Sort of opening to the mystery or opening to
yeah.
life.
Or I want to understand more about this part of myself, or this issue I have, versus like, I want to stop doing X,
Yeah,
or
all those the three you just named there seem so rooted in curiosity
mm-hmm.
and
Yeah, it's
discovery.
like opening the windows and doors, be like, come on in.
Yeah, so less of an outcome driven intention, but more of a sort of
Mm-hmm.
exploratory curiosity, discovery.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, because I feel like for a lot of people, when the bullseye is too narrow, um, it can create constriction within the journey,
Hmm.
which
Mm-hmm.
then can be a difficult experience, because it's not what you thought it should be, and you're wanting, it's
Yeah,
you're
wanting it to be something other than it is.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and, and it seems most people that engage in journeys, even for myself, I've done like mini meditation retreats that
Mm-hmm.
have a similar flavor. There's intention and then there's what happens.
Yeah. Right.
And like if I'm not open to the intention of the retreat, like I'm gonna be disappointed or I'm gonna be
Mm-hmm.
striving in a different direction. But it
Mm-hmm.
seems when we like relax that there's often an intention that's there for us
Mm-hmm.
that we can sort of tap into. I don't know if that
Mm-hmm.
resonates for you, if you could kind of speak to how you see that in your own way, like the intention we bring in versus what actually happens once the ball gets rolling.
Yeah. Well, intentions can also be a resource. So, like, if you are having a difficult time, you can kind of tap back into the intentions. Like,
Mm,
if the intention was, I want to feel more free or whatever, it's like, okay, oh, you're getting into this, like, oh, I don't like this. This is hard. It's scary. Like, okay, can you open to it? Can you relax into it? You know,
Yeah.
for a lot of folks, that's what they're hoping to get out of psychedelics is more flow, freedom, ease.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So intention sort of being helpful and orienting through the process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
So you name sort of having this tool bag, right? That there's
Mm-hmm.
meditating, know your resources, have an
Mm-hmm.
intention. Are there other things that you see helpful for folks?
Yeah, definitely. I think the space that you're in has a huge impact. Somewhere quiet and safe and
And clean,
clean,
clean's a,
that can really help.
no one likes looking at their dirty house after, like, oh
Yeah,
my God, I got so much cleaning to do.
yeah. Soft lighting, a playlist that maybe you've curated for yourself that you think um, might evoke
Yeah,
kind of
kind of
what you're.
the tone you're desiring.
Mhm, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there are playlists out there, but they're created by people with a certain perspective and a certain cultural background. And
Oh, yeah. So like be mindful of the playlists you're using, whether you're drawing
mhm,
on someone else's or creating your own.
mhm,
Yeah.
yeah,
And for you, like I think this is taboo at times, but like through all of history, right? Like protection was a huge part of psychedelic use,
yeah.
even before there was the word psychedelic.
Hmm.
Like, what do you talk to your clients about that at all, or do you hold that yourself and kind of how to have a safe journey?
I haven't, but it's something that I am kind of more aware of, and I think that is kind of what I'm getting at with like grounding objects or having that safe person. But you know, there are definitely people who will call in, you
Yeah,
know, forces.
protectors.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean,
Um,
the traditional paradigms these come from, right? There's an inhabited spirit world, or however you want to
mm-hmm,
talk about it.
mm-hmm.
But we don't
Right.
like
You want to,
maps and these other organizations. They don't seem to be sort of
not a part of the protocol.
not part
Yeah.
of the paradigm, right? I like maybe that's good, maybe that's bad, but like if we've been
Yeah.
doing it for thousands of years, it might be helpful.
Yeah, for sure.
um,
And
yeah,
I think like that just looking like whatever fits for you, because for some people certain language is gonna
yeah. Maybe
be
it's not
weird.
calling in certain deities or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
but it might be like, may I be safe?
Mm-hmm.
May I be
Mm-hmm.
like grounded? May I
Mm-hmm.
come out through this on the other side?
Right. Right.
Yeah. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
cool. So are these like the main ingredients for you that you see kind of reduce harm? Is there any other ones you want to throw in the
Um,
mix?
well, another one, especially because I do work with the clinical population, is considering what medications you're on,
Oh yeah, yeah.
which has more to do with there's there's not a lot of contraindications that we're aware of at this point
Mm-hmm.
in terms of like it's going to hurt you, but there are definitely medications that are common, like antidepressants, that will prevent a journey from happening at all.
Yeah, they're sort of inhibitors to the
Mm-hmm.
experience.
Yeah. And so with those people, what's really awesome as this is becoming more above ground is like I have prescribers that I now refer people to who will work with them on getting off of their antidepressants in order to have a journey.
Hmm.
And that's all they're talking about it, and that's the intention. And
Oh, so for some folks, this is a longer journey, right? Because to
yeah,
come off medication is not an easy process, depending on how long you've been on it and your dosage.
exactly, exactly. Yeah, it could take months to prepare for the journey.
Yeah, to like
Mm-hmm.
have a healthy titration.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. So like sort of the preparation, I think, is what we're talking about right now a bit,
Mm-hmm.
and then integration, right? Like I know we touched on this earlier a bit, but like if you could just speak to that for yourself and for clients and like
Mm-hmm.
um because it does seem like so much of like the work, if you want to call it that, is what you do after or how you hold
Mm-hmm.
the experience.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think the first thing I recommend for people is like give yourself some space afterwards. Like don't do this on a Sunday and you have to go back to work on Monday or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Ideally, a couple days but sometimes it's awesome if like you've got a vacation and you do that at the beginning and you really give yourself room.
Oh yeah, like day one, and then
Hmm.
have some time
Where
to integrate and explore.
and where you're not doing your usual things.
Yeah, because that's part of the sort of the fleeting nature, right? Is like
Hmm.
returning to the habituated patterns so quickly.
Right,
Like,
right.
oh, bam, wide open, and then like wake up at 8 a.m., have coffee, go do that, go do this. And it's like, why do I
Exactly.
feel like I did before? It's like, oh, because
Yeah,
you're doing the same things you do every day.
exactly. Yeah, and dealing with the same forces,
Yeah.
the um the grind, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Back in the meat grinder. Yeah. So like spaciousness, having some space
Hmm.
after as like a
Like,
first step to integration.
yeah, like letting yourself linger in that state, letting yourself just be.
Hmm.
Um, Time where you could be doing things like writing about it, or creating a voice memo, or doing art or movement. Um, just kind of giving more space to that, like whatever the state is kind of pointing you in the direction, like, oh, you need to slow down, or you need to like accept yourself more, like maybe you.
Yeah. Like making room for some intuitive response,
Mm-hmm.
that there's space and to kind of follow it, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
dancing or writing or
Yeah.
maybe calling a friend and talking about it if that feels
Yeah.
safe.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then just trying to figure out, like, how will I carry this forward? Like, what does this mean about what I want my life to look like? Does it mean I
Hmm.
have to stop certain things that I'm doing or add certain things? Um, People will establish kind of new habits, like a morning routine where they have a little more space, or um, that's where it's like, checking in with yourself with some regularity. Being in therapy, I think, is really awesome, because especially, I mean, it needs to be a therapist who's open to it, of course,
Yeah.
who will check in with you, and you'll have that space every week potentially to touch back in to that and see if you're starting to stray from it in ways that could be kind of reoriented.
Yeah. And I think this is a tough line as we talk about it. The, like, I mean, just the name integration, right? Like we return back to the normalcy of our life.
Mm-hmm.
And like that should be expected. Like
Yeah.
like, so it's don't expect it to be radically different. And
Mm-hmm.
also, how do you hold it too and like make more
Mm-hmm.
room or shift in your daily life?
Mm-hmm.
And that seems to be like some people want, they just want it to be blown open, right? Or they want a whole
Yeah.
new life.
Right.
And it's so disappointing that like life returns.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
It
oh,
is. Yeah.
oh man, I'm anxious before this phone call, or I'm
Yeah.
I'm doing this. I watched Netflix for 4 hours last night. Well, eating too many cookies and like, oh
Totally.
yeah, then I feel gross the next morning and like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 'cause we're human.
Right. That pesky humanness.
Yeah, cool. So anything else for you on the integration that really?
I think it really helps to have some amount of community around it.
Oh,
Like, again, just more spaces where you're tapping into that work, and you might hear things from other people that give you new ideas or remind you. With everything being online these days, it's nice that there's a lot that's accessible to people.
mm-hmm.
The Portland Psychedelic Society, for example, has several integration groups, and some of them are specifically for LGBT, LGBTQ,
Yes,
um,
yes.
and a BIPOC group, an elders group. Like, they have,
Like say space groups for kind of where you fall on an identity spectrum.
yes, exactly, where you can relate to other people who are like you.
Yeah.
Um,
Where it can feel safe to explore these things and you can be
right.
open and not have to feel so defended against
Mm-hmm.
the shit of our culture, like
Mm-hmm.
racism and homophobia
Right.
and all that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. yeah, so being open to community and kind of reaching out, it sounds, in some way, to
Hmm.
find people that can make these experiences more integrated.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, whether it's friendships, maybe turning to certain friendships more. Like I even have clients who, just as they become more spiritual, or have like a deep meditative practice, um, they start to feel disconnected from certain relationships because those people aren't doing any sort of personal work, and that
Yeah.
can be really isolating.
Yeah, which can be a hard part on a journey, right? Is
Hmm. No one
like,
to share it with.
yeah.
No one who
And
gets it.
also, or also maybe having to let go of people and things that were
Mm,
once meaningful and valuable but aren't serving
hmm.
anymore,
Right. Yeah, that's
which can be
definitely
so hard.
hmm probably one of the hardest things that
Y-
could come out of a journey.
Yeah, which I think is like true for a lot of folks, that there's hesitation even engaging in this work because they know they
Hmm.
might have to make choices after.
Right. Right.
Like, wait, I don't know if I want to leave my partner.
Hmm. Exactly. Yeah.
So I'm not going to do something that's going to point me towards that direction.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It so helps, and there's no way to control this, but it so helps if you are in a partnership that your partner is also doing their own journeys or explorations or self work.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Anything else, just as we're here, that feels important to you? I know we kind of touched on different things, and
Well, there's so much curiosity right now, but there's also so many resources.
yeah.
And
Is
yeah,
there any of
just
those you want to share right now? I know you named Portland. I don't even remember the name now, but Portland.
Portland Psychedelic Society.
Yeah,
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 there's a
yeah.
lot of acronyms and long names these days. um, yeah, looking on Meetup, there's probably a variety of groups around in different cities, that people could connect with. There's more and more books, that give kind of more specific guidance about uh, certain kinds of journeys or working with certain issues.
Yeah.
So Maps has a pretty extensive
So
reading
basically,
list.
check out Maps.
Look at Maps, yeah, start there. And but there's really kind of something for everyone out there if you're more interested in the traditional healing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you want to be in more traditional ceremonial work or more
Mm-hmm.
sort of modern psychotherapeutic feeling work,
Right, yeah, it's all
or
out there.
or alone on a mountain by yourself,
Alone on a mountain in a cave.
or with a bunch of friends around a
Yeah,
fire. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And as someone that has been kind of started your career with this in a way and has been through a lot of change just in the last 5 years, right? 7 years. Like, where
Hmm.
is there places where you want to see the culture around this work going? Like, what do you want in your heart for this type of work?
I want it to be accessible.
Yeah.
That's really my biggest fear with everything that's happening.
Like, it might
Um,
only be for certain populations, or
Certain
financial
yeah.
sex, like, yeah.
Hmm.
Okay, financially accessible.
Exactly. Yeah. And that was really my concern with Measure 109 and the psilocybin therapy was it didn't say a ton about who would get to do it and how and what's the licensing process going to look like and cost and
Yeah, because there's ways that you can stack it that make it very
oh
expensive,
yeah,
right? If you need a doctor in the room and a therapist, and it
right,
needs to be in a medical facility, or
right. What are the hurdles going to be around the people who do the cultivation and how much it's going to cost just to
oh yeah,
create
licensures and
product.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
Because the reality is that you don't necessarily have to have a doctorate in clinical psychology to be there for someone in an experience like this. But hopefully, there's going to be more and more training options and more people who can serve others to make sure that it's safe um, and that they get the most out of it.
So for you, you really want it to be accessible
Hmm.
to like as many people that are drawn to it.
Yeah, that want that, because
Yeah.
they'll find a way, one way or another.
They are finding ways.
Yes, have been,
For
will always.
yeah, yeah. It's not. It doesn't seem like it's going away.
Right, right.
Yeah. Um.
Yeah.
Sorry, there was
And
the. Oh, please keep going.
well, and with it being accessible, that just meaning there's more and more information and support.
Mm.
Because it really sucks when somebody has an experience kind of haphazardly or without enough support, and then they're suffering for some amount of time.
Yeah, it can be really hard to integrate difficult
Mm-hmm.
experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that people will be doing it wisely, even if it's just for fun, they're doing it wisely. Um, and if they're wanting to get more out of it, that they know what the kind of ways to support that are.
Yeah. I remember when I was a teenager tripping, I didn't know that there was an option to use it in a meaningful way.
Yeah.
Like that wasn't available in the culture so much. So
Right.
it'd be cool that people know there's different doorways into exploration.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just as you talk too, for me, it's like be really nice if these experiences could be like valid,
Mm-hmm.
that we can
Yeah.
talk about them as meaningful and important
Right.
to our lives.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I feel much more comfortable talking about a experience on a meditation retreat
Right.
than on a psychedelic, even though they're
Mm-hmm.
to me like they're equal meaning and value. They're not
Mm-hmm.
different,
Mm-hmm.
but that like our culture could open to uh, these experiences having real value and
Mm-hmm.
importance.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that people wouldn't feel ashamed and scared about the whole thing, because that's a big part of the set and setting.
Yeah, yeah. Like the more relaxed and the more open and safe we feel, the more likely we are to integrate the experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, there's that classic, I think it's a Judaic saying, I forget where in that tradition it falls, but an experience isn't real until another hears it.
Mm. Wow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be nice if we could talk.
It would. It really would. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Any last words as we kind of wind down?
I don't think so. This is definitely an edge for me to kind of
Yeah.
put myself out there even more. And I just want to thank you for asking.
Yeah. How was it for you to be on that edge?
Pretty good.
Pretty
Yeah.
good. Okay.
Yeah. Trying to just have a conversation, not worry too much about how it sounds, but
Yeah, but the worry's there, right? Because this is taboo in a way.
yeah. Hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
and
thank.
just trying to claim some authority or expertise, like I don't.
Yeah, yeah. You want that to be clear, right? Like you are not
Yeah.
an expert on this. You're just someone
Yeah.
that's trying to do the work, like
Has some
everyone else.
experience and
Yeah.
still, yeah, still so much to learn.
Well, I hope every expert has your attitude.
Totally, yes. Yeah, we need to remember the
Yeah.
limits of what we can possibly know about each other and our lives.
Yeah, right. I mean, that humbleness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you for being willing to be on the edge a bit. I do
Mm-hmm.
appreciate it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you so much, Sarah. And if
Thank
people
you.
wanted to like connect to you or kind of, is there, you have a website or
I
some way?
do, yeah. It's phoenixrisingpsychology.com.
And do you do work with people outside of the state or are you kind of mostly staying within state?
I have a license also in Washington, but my schedule is totally full right now.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I hear that from most therapists these days.
Yeah, we're pretty in demand.
Yes, go figure. But for people that want to just keep an eye out for the future, there
Yeah, yeah.
obviously are exciting possibilities coming our way. So
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. I really appreciate you
yeah,
taking the time.
thank you.
Yeah, yeah.